Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
Greetings, race fans, and welcome to Apex Racing TV's coverage of the Extreme Motorsports Ricmotech Sports Car Series, brought to you by Proforma Elite. J.R. Gregory here on the call beside me in the commentary booth. My partner, Chad Dick, covering today for Greg Ginsburg and Lefty McLeod. So you Greg and Lefty fans, fear not. They will be back next week. But for this week, we are at round 3 of the Ricmotech Sports Car Series. Round 3 is going to take us to Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the road course. And if you're just joining us here for the first time, this is a mixed class event. We have 2 classes of cars on the track today. The LMP3, which is a spec class featuring the Ligier LSP 320, fairly lightweight 2,000-pound monocoque chassis powered by a Nissan V8, 5.6 liters of normally aspirated power, 460 horsepower, and that V8 horsepower and torque is going to scoot this LMP3 around this course in a hurry. Running out there with the LMP3s are a collection of GT4 cars featuring the Porsche 718 Cayman, BMW M4, McLaren 570S, Aston Martin Vantage, and the Mercedes AMG. And most of those cars between 400 and 500 horsepower and 3,000 pounds. We're going to see a lap time disparity between these 2 classes of about 10 seconds. So as this race unfolds today, these drivers are going to have to be mindful of traffic and help each other get through. And one more detail on the latter of those 2 classes, the GT4 classes, there are 2 subclasses, a Pro and Pro-Am, and you'll be able to tell those apart during the broadcast as we see that Mercedes AMG heading down the straightaway, number 34. He has green mirrors, green end plates, and a green windshield banner. That is an indicator of the AM class. The Pro class will show you red in those areas. So Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the iconic location. It is the 3rd oldest permanent racetrack in the world and the highest capacity sports venue in the world. They can get over 250,000 people into this facility to watch road racing. And now this configuration that we're running today, they've had a few road race configurations. This is the latest, put together in 2014, 14 corners, about 2.5 miles. And we have seen Indy cars, F1 cars, and last weekend we got to enjoy a stunning 1-2 finish by Porsche in their 963 prototypes in the IMSA series. And the fastest lap. All right, and with that, our producer is telling us we're going to take a quick look at our track guide provided by Kevin Ford, and he'll show you the ins and outs of Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Welcome, everyone, to Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Great to have you with us as we provide you your track guide today around this 14-turn, 2.43-mile road course. The first thing you'll notice, we are sitting backwards on the Indianapolis Speedway here. Typically, cars will run counterclockwise on this course. Well, on the road course, it's clockwise. Well, let's head up the front straightaway here. You'll notice our grandstands to the left, our main pit area to the right, as we get up to speed and head down this very fast front straightaway. This is obviously where most overtaking will happen here, is heading down into turn 1. It is very difficult to get through this corner side by side, but overtaking here is very popular. We'll get down into second gear here. We'll make our right, head down into turn 1, and then up into turn 2 here. Out of 2, we'll catch the apex of 3. We're going to track way out left here to set up this late apex for turn 4. And then out of 4, we'll come to throttle. This will set us up for the chicane here through turns 5 and 6. And then out onto this interior straightaway. The next big opportunity for overtaking happens right here as we head down towards turn 7, another heavy brake zone here, and a very difficult left-hander, very tight elbow here. Back to the left, we'll set up our entry into turn 8 here. Another little switchback section into 9, and then ultimately into this slightly off-camber exit of turn 10. You can see that grade there, very tough to get the throttle down and get power off of that corner. Now through 11, this will bring us up into 12, the final sector here at Indy's road course. Down into second gear, we'll make that tight right-hander of 12, and then into 13 here, another tight left-hander. We'll come right back to throttle and get some good momentum up out of 13 to come around 14 flat out and head up the front straightaway here towards the start-finish line. There you go. There is your track guide for the amazing road course here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Thank you for being with us.
All right, and thank you, Kevin, for that track guide. So, Chad, I know that you are a big fan of this track. I watched you over the last week running IMSA, padding your iRating in sort of an embarrassing manner due to your dominance here. Now, I've heard some folks compare this place to a kind of a autocross setup in the lonely parking lot of an abandoned Kmart. So some people are not crazy about this place, and I know that you love it. So why don't you tell us what you think the high points are about the IMS road course?
Some people, I say. Are you saying that on behalf of a friend, I suppose?
A very wise and respectable friend that I.
Indeed.
Yes.
No, this is one of those tracks where I think you have a love or a hate relationship with it. It works for some people, it doesn't for others. This is going to be a huge difference from what we've seen in this series over the last 2 weeks, where we had a huge track, VIR, out in the wilderness, one of the greatest tracks in the United States, followed by a smaller, maybe more traditional track with Mosport up in Canada, but both very hilly, lots of blind corners, lots of up and downs. We're going to get none of that today. This is a flat track, and as such, I think it's going to show off the big differences between these cars. So you've got the Ligier with high downforce. I think we'll be able to manage this track with a little bit more pace and speed on throttle than the GT4s will, whereas the GT4s are a momentum car. So you want to brake as little as you can, carry as much speed as you can into these corners. And I think we're going to see very different driving between the two different classes, most notably when they go through those S's on turns like 9, 10, and 11 towards the back. I think the GT4s will be carrying more speed through there, where the LMPs will be powering through there. And then, of course, a couple of long straights. Obviously, the LMP3s are going to have a huge speed advantage, so we'll see lots of overtaking on the front straight and the back straight, both in class and between classes. One of the reasons I enjoyed the IMSA races here is this is a track that I think is really ideal for multi-class racing, because if you're racing single class, it can get kind of boring because it's hard to pass within your own class. Throw in the unexpected developments that happen in multi-class, and it starts to get really interesting. I will tell you, the one spot that I'll be watching is the fast chicane, turns 5 and 6. The GT4s can eat those curbs and almost pretend like they're not there, whereas the LMP is not going to like it very much. So they may be avoiding the curbs, yet carrying a ton of speed through there. We're going to have to see if anybody's brave enough to go 2 wide, 3 wide, because in the iRacing IMSA series, we got 3 different classes at play here with the GTPs, the LMP2s, and the GT3s. man, oh man, do I see some chaos and carnage in that fast chicane. Hopefully we won't see that tonight. We'll see some good, respectful, gentlemanly drivers through there, respecting leaving room, navigating that one. That's where there's typically a lot of troubles. Last thing I would say is there are a lot of turns here coming off of long, fast straights, which create great opportunities for passing. So turn 1 is the obvious one. If you watched the Porsche Cup Series here last weekend at Indy, it was fantastic. Lots of action going into turn 1. But same thing on the back straight. At the end of the long straight, there's a left-hand turn there. I think you're going to see a lot of prototypes diving in there because they're going to want to get ahead of the slower class car before they go through the twisty S's. If you get stuck behind a GT4 on those S's, it's going to feel like you're waiting forever because you got to wait 3 corners before you can pass them again as you enter back out onto the oval. So it's a simple track, it's a flat track, but I think it actually has quite a lot to offer, and I'm looking forward to seeing how these two types of cars in these 3 different classes, navigate the race today over an hour, because a lot can happen.
Excellent. That is some great insight, Chad. And one further question for you about traffic. As I mentioned previously, we've got about a 10-second lap time differential between these two classes. So it's not going to be very many laps when the prototypes come around and start mixing in with the GT4 traffic. In what way do these drivers kind of need to work together to make the passing as lacking in drama and as safe as possible without killing a lot of speed?
That's one of the things that I love about both driving and watching multi-class racing, because you can tell if they're coordinating and working together or not. I suspect because this is a 60-minute race, people will be playing the long game and we'll see quite a lot of coordination. The kind of coordination you need to see is really clear signaling. So if you're in a prototype in a faster car and you're going to take the inside, good to flash your lights once, get on the inside line, show your nose, declare your line. Same thing for the GT4s. They need to declare their line. If they're in front and they've got a faster car approaching, and I think the place we're going to see this the most is in turns 3 and 4, because it always gets a little confusing as to whether the slower class cars can take the inside line or the outside line there. And so I think, the GT4s really need to declare going into turn 3, as we're seeing here, are you going to hold it tight and let the LMPs on the outside? Or are you going to track out wide like the normal line here and give them room on the inside? It can be done both ways, but it requires communication, coordination, signaling in order to make it work. So I think those are going to be the kinds of places that I'll be looking for good communication and signaling between the classes of cars.
Yeah, and worth noting, these drivers have been preparing for this race together all week. My understanding is that they get 4 extended practice opportunities in the week leading up to the race. So hopefully they've been able to work out some of those little routines, particularly in that tight 3-4 section that Chad was just talking about. If you're in a GT4 car on the limit, committed to a line, you're in no position to make any sudden changes because a prototype behind you is expecting you to do something that the car's not capable of doing. So with any luck, these drivers have been working those kind of little dances out between these wildly speed differential 2 classes of vehicles, and are in good shape to put on a good show here today. And as qualifying is unfolding here, we're about halfway through. It looks like the P3 provisional pole sitter is putting down 121.604. That's Dom. And GT4 class, we have Rain putting down a 130.16. Again, 9-10 second lap time differential between these classes. GT4 AM looks like Dragata there, and the Aston Martin is putting down a 131.024. So those times we're obviously going to see some mixing between the GT4 Pro and AM cars as qualifying unfolds here. They got plenty of time left. My understanding is that they're, although it's a 15-minute session, that they get their best 4 laps, I believe. Chad, is that your recollection?
Yeah, that's correct. Although I think what we're seeing quite a lot in the last 2 seasons of iRacing is not everybody's using every single out lap or warm-up lap, qualifying lap. Instead, they're turning them into extra warm-up laps just to get the tires in optimal condition. So I'm not sure every driver will use all 4 laps. Some may need to. This is not a track that lends itself to lots of off tracks. So, if you're a confident driver and you're willing to spend one of your qualifying laps to do a double out lap or something like that, I think we might see that. I just build one more thing on what you said about multi-class coordination. This section that we're seeing here, 7, 8, 9, and 10, I think is going to be very different for the two classes. Oh, even once they've declared their line, the GT4s are going to want to go through there with lots of sort of smooth momentum and speed. So they're going to be kind of trying to carry as much speed, whereas I think the LMPs are going to be on full throttle trying to push through there. And that's going to be, I mean, that's obviously something, without using voice comms, it's going to be hard to communicate and coordinate. So we'll have to see how that plays out through that section in 7, 8, 9, and 10.
Oh, for sure, and I definitely have sympathy for the GT cars. A couple of these sections going from the infield out onto the oval, it happens in two places on the track, and particularly that turn 14, if you're in a slower car or GT car, you really have to run the car right up to the track boundaries in order to get a good exit there. Both on the apex and on the exit, and if you're watching your mirrors and watching a prototype trying to stick it inside, it's going to completely kill your lap time. So I'm sure the prototype might be frustrated by being held up, but a prototype thrown into the wrong place can really mess up a GT4 driver's lap as well, and that's part of the give and take of multi-class racing, I suppose, and one of the things that makes it interesting, a fan favorite in Europe as well as in the IMSA series here in the US.
Yeah, that corner in particular, I think, is one that I focus on when trying to figure out my setup for this track. You want to run as little wing as possible, but this is largely a high downforce track because it's so flat and lots of turns. So, in a GT3, for example, it's, 10, 11, or 12 wing. I don't know what these guys are going to be running here, but I did play around a little bit in the GT4 today, and, just the standard sprint setup was not enough wing to get through that corner. You really start to lose the tail end there. So that's going to be another place to watch out for, because obviously the prototypes with the high downforce should be able to navigate that last corner and get back onto the front straight with quite a lot of speed. Whereas if you get on the wrong side of the camber there, and you're in a GT4, be careful for throttle oversteer into the wall on the right, or as you saw, if you see a prototype diving on the inside, you might get on the wrong side in the off camber and not be able to get quite on throttle and carry as much speed down the straight as you'd like.
All right, well, it looks like qualifying may have slowed down just a touch here, about 5 minutes remaining. I'm not sure if there's any cars actually on track at the moment. I see a couple out there, actually. Looks like Mike Dam is out there, Eric Violet, Copeland is out there, as well as Sterling. But so far, you see on our timing tower there, the provisional 1 through 5 of each of our 3 classes, and we're showing the bottom half there of the GT4 AM course. And yeah, this is going to be exciting. It's a very interesting mix. It's kind of one step down from the typical LMP2 GT3 mix that we're accustomed to seeing in some of the other series. There are some beautiful cars out here, and I got to say, it does not take long to fall in love with the V8 rumble of that Nissan V8, man. That motor sounds fantastic. It's a 4-cam 32 valve V8 with variable valve timing, and they are milking that thing. Actually came out of a delivery van, believe it or not, and a couple of luxury cars, but they are milking that thing for a very good amount of horsepower and torque, and those LMP3 cars are a hoot to drive.
Well, I see Eric Violet, one of our past champions. Just, we'll take a look at the championship standings here in a second, but as Lee pulls that up for us, I'll note that Eric Violet, who was still out there on track, managed to improve his position to P3 in the LMP, so he's now sitting in right behind the leader on the grid, so it'll be interesting to see if anybody wants to go back out and try and best that with the time that's remaining.
All right, and just in a moment here, we'll be seeing our championship standings thus far. And there they are, 2 rounds in now. There is your LMP3 leaderboard with Kyle in P1. I'm not even going to take a swing at that one. Travis Schwenke in P2, only separated by 5 points. Eric Violet, multiple champion last couple seasons in the touring car series when that was part of the SportsCar series here on of the Ricmotech series. Mike Dam will be in P4. Glover, Brooks, Jackson, Beaver, Jones, and Bobby Childs will round out your top 10. And you see a nice cluster. No one's really run away. Those top handful of drivers are just within a very few points. So really everything is up for grabs at this point. P11 is Robert Hartley, Brandon Whitworth in 12. Ryan Reeves will be P13. Dre Divock in P14. Hutchings in 15 and Rambler in 16. Hutchings and Rambler not scoring any points yet, but the season is young. And Chad, why don't you run us through GT4 pro standings?
Well, and to give our two LMPs there at the bottom a little break, I think they're both new to the league this week, so they'll be looking forward to the drop weeks counting as we move forward. This is the third race of the season. I think there's one drop week, and it starts counting after this race. So in the GT4 Pro, we've got Ken Copeland, who is solidly in the lead with 122 points, 9 points behind him. We've got David Patton, or Peyton, depending upon which side of Canada you live and how you want to pronounce his last name. We've got Horan from D2 Sim Racing in third place with 114 points, followed by Jeff Jacobs. Then we have Schwenkler, Thorman, Ford, Justin Rem, who won last week, so expect him to improve on that standing there in P8. He is quite an impressive driver. I've seen him in a number of leagues. He's a geodesic racer. Steve Daniel in P9, and Mariano Barrios bringing it up with 0 points thus far, but that's probably because he's new to this class as well.
All right.
Back over to you for the M's.
Oh, yeah, and GT4. And we have Dragon Sport 7. He will be your P1. Ian Patience, Chuck Labano, John Sterling, Russ Ruddock, and so far those top 5, only 7 points separating them. Alex Brown, Neil Weston, John Casey, Tom Jenkins, and Greg Brockway will round out your top 10. And Brockway, again, only a handful of points. He may not. His drop week may be involved in that score. So the standings will make a little more sense the further into the season that we get. And then we have Husty, Maxwell, Brist, Angelicio, and Matt Campbell.
Well, one thing to note between the two different classes is both the GT4 classes are competing for the same set of points, which is one of the reasons you see those differences between Pro and Am. So if you're an Am and you do really well, you can collect some points right along with the Pros and improve your standing quite significantly.
All right, and here is our grid as we prepare for the green here. In like just over a minute here, we're going to go green. We are going to have a pace lap, and for folks watching, we will not be using the iRacing green go lights, the iRacing starter. Both classes will be started by the human race control. So the prototypes will be released first. The GT cars will remain on their formation lap until they get the audible green from race control. So that'll make the race start a little tidier and that mad dash down into turn 1.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the live race control starts, particularly at this track. Anybody who's been running the IMSA series here a couple of weeks ago, and even at Fuji this week, where you got these extraordinarily long front straights, if you rely on the iRacing starter, the green light typically doesn't come on until the front cars are getting very close to the tower, which is very late. And depending upon what the class behind has done, it can create all sorts of chaos depending upon where you're starting. But in this case, with live race control setting the green, we can be assured that both classes of cars will get well, gridded up and into the starting zone. So it should be a nice tight pack. The good news is we should have a clean start. The challenge will be we're going to see a lot of cars storming down that front straight into turn 1, and we'll see if they're well behaved and stay side by side or line it up single file, or are they going to get aggressive and go 3-4 wide.
All right, and once more our grid, Mike Tam in P1. Hartley will be beside him in the front row. Eric Violet in P3. Schwenke next to him will complete row 2. Jackson and Glover in row 3. Books, Ramler. Behind them, Kyle and Brandon Whitworth will be row 5. Joe Hutchings and Aaron Beaver back in row 6. And moving on down the grid. We'll obviously be mixing our Pro and Ams in the GT4s depending on their qualifying position. Bobby Childs will be the last prototype in P13. He will have a Pro GT4 Pro car next to him. Justin Rame in P14. Barrios and Copland will be behind them. Schwenkler and David Patton, 17 and 18. Chris Thorman in 19. And then in P20 are actually P1 car in the AM class Dragata. That is row 10. Ian Patience and Huron behind them in P21, P22. Ford and Dragata will follow them behind that row. Labano and Brown. 27 is John Casey with Neil Weston. John Sterling and Russ Ruddock will be 29 and 30. Steve Daniel and Greg Brockaway will be in row 16. And all alone in the back, Dale Maxwell of Team 1 Racing will be bringing up the rear. And there is your grid. And again, folks, don't get too excited over those start lights. We are going to be audibly started by race control here, as you see the actually we're hearing race control right now warning those GT4 drivers against heating their tires, telling them to get in line and to get in their side-by-side formation. One thing that we can have with a live race control here is he can wave off the start. So these GT4 cars had best get in line and fly right as they're being instructed to. And we're hearing from race control, the prototypes are being told to be prepared for the green as we're rounding the last corner onto the front straight here, I believe. Oh, not quite. We're still working our way with the GT4s through the last 12, 13, 14 section.
It'd be interesting to see if we had a jump start there, because it looked like P2 heard the green from iRacing and jumped out just a little bit in front of P1. So we'll see what happens if that triggers on race control. Oh, we got a little messiness there going into turn 1. Looks like Michael Brooks and Bruce Jackson crashed there going into turn 1. They've managed to collect themselves and get back on track, so hopefully no damage there.
All right, and there is our GT4 start. Chad, you pick up that P by P for me just for 1 second. I have a little technical issue on my end.
Yeah, you got it. We a little bit cleaner on the GT4s there. They're going through turns 3 and 4 now. That kind of tricky little part. Going to turn back onto the fast chicane there and go onto the back straight. Things are relatively in good order there. Haven't seen any off tracks or contact, so that's good. Got Justin Ream still in the lead, followed by Mariano Barrios and Ken Copeland. Looks like switching up to the LMP3s there. We had somebody jumping into the pits. I'm wondering if that's our good start there. It's Robert Hartley who entered pit lane for us. All right, things are starting to sort themselves out here. We're now single file going into turn 1 here in the P3s. We got somebody popping out there, maybe to make a move on into turn 1. Eric Violette there sitting in P8, back up to P1. We still have Mike Dam leading the P3 class. Right behind him is Travis Schwenke, right on his tail, enjoying that draft. Coming into that section I was talking about before, turns 7, 8, 9, and 10. See them powering through here, trying to get those tires warm. It usually takes about 2 laps or so for the tires really to come into temperature here and for them to get comfortable. So I would imagine they're managing the lack of anti-lock braking systems here to make sure that they are not going to spin the car in any of these hard braking zones. Not get on throttle too quickly and spin the tail end with the rear wheel drive either. So these two have kind of jumped out to a little bit of a lead here, about a half a second splitting the two of them, but then almost 3.5 seconds, 3.7 seconds to the group behind. So I would imagine these two, if they're coordinating, are probably going to try and run away here from the pack that's behind. Here's 3 and 4. This is Scott Ramler and Baron Glover, obviously giving chase and trying to catch back up. And here we have our leader in the GT4 class, Justin Ream. As we were saying in the pre-race discussion, you can tell the different class cars in GT4 by the colors of the banners on their windows and their mirrors, as well as their wing caps. So the red signifies our Pro class. This is P1 and P2 in our GT4 Pro. So this is Justin Ream in the lead, followed by Mariano Barrios. We have kind of a similar situation developing here in GT4, where you got the front two kind of starting to break away a little bit. And then you got 3, 4, and 5 given chase right behind. In this case, about 1 to 2 to 3 seconds behind Justin and Mariano. We've got Ken Copeland, Chris Thorman, and David Patton giving chase. Here we're looking at Leo Dragota, who is right behind them, one of the two Dragota brothers of Dragon Sport Racing. We've been having some good, consistent runs over the first two races. I believe Leo won the M class at VIR, so he's probably looking to put up another victory here today if he can catch back up to the front, catch their draft, and improve his position.
All right, thank you, Chad. I think I've got my little technical issue squared away there. With my apologies. Looks like we're watching Dragota here, and that beautiful Aston Martin heading down that central straightaway in the infield. It's got patience there. That may be a pro car in front of him in the BMW. The car that is in front of him in his own class is a couple cars ahead. Got a couple pro cars in between. That's Ford in the 7 BMW in front of Dragota, and in front of him, Brendan Huron. And that will put patience. Yeah, that's a tough road to hoe for Dragota, as he has 2 pros to get through to try to make a move on the next car in his own class. We're watching Haran there make his way through the infield.
You know, it's one of the things that I really like about the GT4 class is the balance of performance is so level and even between them. And I think it's one of the reasons why we see almost all of the different models represented here, with maybe one exception. We've got only one Porsche 718 came in the field with Neil Weston. Most of the others are Mercedes, BMW, McLaren. I would say Mercedes probably our top car represented in the GT4 class here, but there's quite a lot of equal performance between them. So really, it's choose a car that suits your style and that you feel most comfortable in.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of these cars do come down to driving style. I know that you spent some time with a Mercedes on this course today, really about straight line power and that V8 and the 911, or I'm sorry, the Cayman mid-engine car, and a couple of other mid-engine cars a little more crisp on the turn in, a little better mechanical grip. So you really do have a wide variety of vehicles to choose from, depending on what your comfort level is. As we're watching Glover now, looks like he has moved up 2 positions from his qualifying. Probably has something to do with our little kerfuffle off of the start. And
looks like we might have just had a change in the lead up front in the LMP3 as Travis Schwenke has taken the lead away from Mike Dam. Not sure if we can go back and see how that happened, but that quickly popped up on my timing tower. I wonder what kind of move he put on Mike, who is consistently running at the front of the field here in all 3 races.
Yeah, I note that as well, Chad. And the last time I looked, Dam had about a half-second gap ahead of Schwenke. So there's over a second swing there. I hope Dam didn't have a problem and pick up damage because he seems to be dropping precipitously. Now a 0.8 gap between him and Schwenke ahead.
Yeah, it's
a little bit of video trouble here as we're watching Brooks here on the start.
And so this is Russ Reddick in our GT4 coming into the front straight here. That's that little off-camber part there that I was talking about. Oh, sorry, it's coming into turn 14 there, the final turn complex. Yeah, it looks like you just had too many cars fighting for position there. Somebody lost their bumper along the way.
Yeah, and Ruddock there, I'm not sure if there was anything he could do. It looked like somebody really checked up in front of him. There's a little accordion action heading into that tough 90-degree right-hander off of the back straight under heavy braking. Not really. Ruddock was the last in line, but there are a couple cars in an accordion-style collision there. And here is Schwenke now making his way through traffic as the prototypes are catching the back of the GT4s. And we were talking about Schwenke and Dam before, and here is that transaction. Looks like Schwenke gets a little draft on that interior straightaway, and maybe a pick from that GT4, and that explains the big time loss by Dam. And as I said, they were right side by side, and by the end of this lap, that gap has increased to almost a second. So Schwenke, either by luck or by design, gets a great pick off of that GT4 car and drives away from Dam, now 1.1 seconds behind. And again, mixed class giveth and mixed class taketh away. It can slow you down at times, and it can speed you up if you can time your move and get a pick like that. Wow.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant example of multi-class racing at its best there. You know, he obviously was racing head-to-head with his competitor and pulled out, and then he all of a sudden saw the traffic ahead, and they all three had to coordinate to make it work, and they did. So kudos to all three of them for getting through that corner, even though it slowed Mike Dam up and he lost the position. We didn't have any incidents, so that was very, very well done in my book.
Absolutely. As we're watching Dragata here now, he is your GT4 AM leader, and pretty good gap behind, 1.4 seconds behind to Patience, and I think there's some pro cars in between them. So Dragata looking good at the moment as these prototypes begin to work their way through the GT4 field. And again, as we were discussing earlier, this takes patience, it takes communication, and hopefully throughout the week of practice that these drivers have had, they've kind of worked out their strategy for getting through some of these sections. And this is the section in particular Chad was talking about before, 3-4, and the GT cars really want to stay online through this section, and the prototypes want to hurry up and take those spaces, and it can be very difficult for as a GT4 driver to recover when you have to correct your line driving at the limit in those tight third gear corners.
Yeah, for our spectators at home, I think for the first couple of pass-throughs, you can expect to see the prototypes mixed up with the GT4s just about every 8 laps. So they're coming through right on schedule here because they've got about a 10-second advantage, and it's about an 80-second lap for them. But obviously, as the race goes on and things get mixed up and incidents happen and people start to pit, that's going to change, and we'll end up with a really mixed up grid. But right now, it's kind of clusters of prototypes trying to work together in pairs and threes to get through this GT4 traffic. And that makes for some really exciting racing, if not challenging for the drivers, because, you know, it's one thing to get one car through a gap. It's another thing when a couple of them want to go nose to tail and hook up with each other and find that little gap and you know, take the opportunity when it presents itself. So it's going to be a real challenge on both classes to continue to navigate one another very cleanly here.
And riding along with Michael Brooks here, he's running in P8 in the prototype class, and there is a pretty good train forming behind Brooks. It's Brooks from Childs from Jackson, and just a couple of clicks now between Brooks and Childs. And folks, these cars will generate a draft, and there are a couple of long straightaways here that are going to make that draft happen. And once Brooks gets through this little combination of corners onto what I'm calling the interior straight. I think it does have a name, something Avenue, if I recall. But once Brooks gets in here, he's going to have Childs right on his rear bumper. He's got that gap down to about 0.3, and see if he gets enough of a draft to make a move into turn 7.
Well, I think you got part of the answer to your question earlier in the broadcast about whether they're going to be coordinating and cooperating. I'd say, look at all these cars. We've got about 10 cars that just went through 2 chicanes there without any incident. I think they're doing a good job communicating and coordinating there, because this is the trickiest part of multi-class when the first time the faster class starts to come through in packs.
And up to lap 9 already. And yeah, very clean start. I'm not seeing any one parked at this point, so looking really good. As Chad said, it can definitely can be controlled chaos here in the early going when the cars are still fairly tightly packed together and these prototypes start coming through the GT4 field. Not only are you watching the car ahead of you, trying to gain positions as a slower class driver, watching what's coming up behind you, you also have to keep an eye out for these prototypes. Just looking away from the relative for a moment, and the closing speeds can be pretty significant, and you can find yourself with a prototype next to your door in a heartbeat if you're not paying very close attention. So it's really a handful to be involved in these mixed class racing events, and these drivers are doing a great job so far. And flipping through my notes here, looking at our fuel strategies here, this is a fuel limited event, and both classes will be required to do a fuel stop at some point during the race. The LMP3 pit window is pretty large. They can pit anywhere from lap 9 up until lap 34. And there's a lot of strategy that goes into making that decision. Obviously, if the later you pit, the less time you spend taking on fuel. So ideally, you'd run that tank dry and just take the splash to get you to the end. But we are inside that the prototype pit window, and we may be seeing a pit stop here, or maybe a penalty. I did hear race control just hand out a penalty to one of these drivers, didn't catch which one. So we may be seeing a drive-through here, or we may be seeing an early pit by the P3s. And as I said, their pit window should be open. The GT4 pit window should open by about lap 13 for them.
Yeah, this is Scott Ramler, car number 39, who just received a black flag for contact earlier in the race. So he's clearing his flag here and getting back out onto the track.
And we're going to take a look at Dam here. It's like he's trying to make something happen around the outside. Oh, and a little bit too much curb. And as Chad was saying, that's the difference that you're going to see between these cars. These GT4s can touch every curb on every lap and have it be part of their normal racing line. And the prototypes sometimes don't like those curbs. They're sprung a little stiffer. And if you break that aerodynamic seal of that bodywork that generates all that downforce, break that seal by getting one side of the car or another too far off the track surface, your downforce can suddenly plummet to zero, and you can lose all that grip in a hurry. And that may have been what happened to Dam there. A little bit too much curb on that entry into the infield, and that is not one of those cute little black, blue and white kind of flat extensions of the track. That is a real sausage curb, and it will launch that car up in there, as you saw there.
Yeah, stiff suspension sends the car's wheels up in the air, and as my driving coach said very early on in his work with me, he said cars always have more grip and they have 4 tires on the ground than just 2. So for these cars that rely on downforce and grip, particularly to get through a sharp 90-degree corner like that, you don't want to have 2 wheels up in the air.
Riding with Labano now. Looks like he's taking a look at Patience. No, that's a car from another class. That BMW is pro markings there, as you can see from the wing end plates and the mirrors. So you see that green highlighted car coming up behind the BMW. That is not for a class position. So he's again in an unenviable position of having to get through presumably more experienced driver to make a move on the next driver in his own class. And that may be him right there. The next car in front of that BMW may be Patience, with about a 1.2 second gap with that M4 in between there. And tough to have to make a move under these circumstances, although Labano is certainly giving it his best and polishing the bumper of that pro class BMW.
Well, judging by that picture you see on our screen, he clearly doesn't have his driver's license yet, and I wonder if he can see over the steering wheel. But for both of those shortcomings, he's doing a heck of a job here keeping up with a higher class car, the pro class car in front of him. And keep in mind that while they may not be racing for position, they are racing for the same set of points in the GT4 class. So if he can get by, it's to his advantage to collect a little bit more points within his own class.
Yeah, I'll see if he can do something with the draft here. And now we're looking at Patton and Thorman in a couple of the Aston Martins here. Boy, those are beautiful cars. D2D Racing teammates, and it's quite early here. Of course, we're barely not even 20 minutes into an hour race. So, Chad, what's the benefit of having a teammate on the track with you in a race like this, in a longer race?
Well, particularly if you're running next to each other and you can provide each other a draft, so that instead of fighting each other at the end of these long straights, you just sling each other by and work together to try and catch up to the next pod. I think we're starting to see that, particularly here in the GT4 class. They're starting to pair off little groups of 3. It's definitely to your advantage to stay inside the draft, so that you can both fuel save, take it a little easier on the tires, so that you can lift and coast into the braking zones and not have to brake maybe as hard. So I think having a teammate that you know you're coordinating with, oftentimes through communications in a separate, either channel within iRacing or in Discord, we oftentimes find that, this is a big part of the strategy. It's one thing to go fast, it's another thing to drive safely, but it's also a third thing to drive smartly. And when you've got a partner in crime who can help you think things through in the moment and overall strategy, I think it is an advantage for sure. So anybody who's racing with a teammate on track, I think, you got to give, a +1 nod to, because they've got a little something extra that the other guys may not have.
Absolutely. And additionally, what do you think the chances are that these two may switch back and forth a few times here and allow each of them to save a little bit of fuel? Is that is any fuel savings potentially at play here?
Yeah, I think in the GT4 class, the draft isn't as strong as it is in the LMP3s, so unlikely to see the sort of leapfrogging that you sometimes see at a place like Daytona. Coming off the back straight, people will open it up and let somebody in on the inside. I suspect what we'll see is more like they'll do like bulk laps. So one person will lead for like 5 or 10 laps, and then they'll switch positions just to equal out, to your point, the fuel burn. Because if they enjoy racing together, they're going to want to make sure they come out of the pits together as well. But if one has a major fuel advantage over the other, that can lead to, a couple of seconds here or there, in the pits. And all of a sudden you might find yourself without your draft buddy when you come out of the pits.
Yeah, and I have lost my feed there, and it was an inopportune time. It looked like Brooks and Childs were going 3 wide with a GT car going through that tough 3-4 section, and I see Childs has taken a tow potentially now. That could have been an incident. What are you seeing there, Chad?
He's just come into the pit lane and he's parking it. So I'm not sure if he's coming in for service early on the service because he found himself caught up there in traffic. This is one of those things where it'd be nice to have a microphone on our drivers and ask them what they're doing right now. Is this part of the, is this part of the plan strategy, or is this an impromptu adjustment where, where you go to plan B or plan C kind of a thing, as we oftentimes hear in the Formula One broadcast, switching, pre-prepared plans based on how things start to go in the race. But at the moment, he is unfortunately sitting in the pits, and that's obviously going to compromise the 3 spots that he gained already at this point in the race. So here we are on Chuck Labano, sticking tight to Ian Patience in front of him. This is a good example of using the draft of the car in front of you. These are both 2 AM drivers, so these are in the same class, fighting for position and points in the same class. So unlike the other one where we saw teammates coordinating, this could be an example where we start to see a little bit more opportunistic fighting when the opportunity presents itself. That was a good example at the end of the long straight, how, with a car in front of you, it is very helpful to gauge and manage your braking distance, oftentimes lifting and coasting and braking a little bit lighter earlier so that you can get, pull it in nice and tight to the car in front of you and prepare either to get on gas sooner than that guy coming out of the corner, or just set up the next move in the next corner sequence. So I thought that was a nice example of that there.
Yeah, and my apologies, folks. Once again, I'm having a little bit of a video snag here, so I'm going to step out just for a moment and leave it with Chad. I will be right back with you.
Well, we wish the tech gods will send them your way and hope that we can get some of those bugs worked out for us. Here we are looking at Baron Glover, who's sitting in P4 in the P3 class, putting up a good fight here. Looks like he's got Brandon Whitworth giving chase. This is, again, another example in both classes where we start to see cars kind of pair up, 3 up, based on their position in track. These guys are obviously trying to chase down the top 3 in the LMP3s. We've got Travis Schwenke still leading, Mike Dams in P2, and Kyle Streichertz, who was our winner last week, in P3. This is P4 and 5, so rounding out our top 5 here, and obviously these two want to try and get into some podium contention. So I would imagine that we might see a little bit more, coordination than fighting between these two at this moment, just because, as you can see, the next few cars are quite a bit up the road, about a 5-second gap between Barron and the next car up, Kyle Streichertz. So they've got some ground to make back up, and I would imagine that's going to lead to more coordination and drafting than real fighting, which tends to slow the cars down, particularly when you're in the faster class like this. So I would imagine this is going to be one of those things that we'll see play out like this until one or both of them decides to pit. That's typically the kind of thing that breaks up this kind of paired sequence on track. So just kind of running through our timing board here, as I said, we got Schwenke, Dam, and Streichertz in the top 3 positions in the LMP3. In the GT4 Pro, Justin Ream, from the beginning of the race, has jumped out to a commanding lead. He's got almost a 10-second gap now over Copeland, who's in P2, and Barrios is just a couple seconds behind, about 3 seconds behind in P3. And then in the GT4 AM, we've got Leo Dragoda, who again has consistently been in front. He's opened up not quite as commanding the lead as Justin Ream, but he's 6 seconds ahead of Patience, followed by Labano, as we saw there. The two of them kind of hooking up and working together, perhaps trying to do the same thing we just saw in the Pro class, or excuse me, the P3 class, and work together to try and close the gap with Leo Dragoda, who's in P1 there. So we're looking at Ian Patience here as they go through the fast chicane there onto the back straight. You'll see that prototype being difficulty quite an average to slower traffic, but got through, as you said, exciting without contact. Sometimes you have to adjust on the fly, as they did, and I think all the drivers there get credit for doing so without incident. So it's a perfect example where you can see the prototype really wants to get by this GT3 before coming into the section, because otherwise he's got to wait these 3 corners, and then typically they take the inside line here, blast on past, and then head on their way as they get ready for the front straight. GT4 is doing a nice job leaving room there on the inside while trying to maintain as much of the fast racing line as they can. Again, here's where it gets kind of interesting. Oh, well, we saw a little bit of prototype there coming together with the GT4. That just looked like 4 cars fighting for the same position on track. Maybe a little bit of contact. Maybe a little bit too much braking there. Not quite sure what caused that. We might have to go back and look and see if there's actual contact there, if that was just, working too hard to avoid contact with one another. But that was Brandon Whitworth, who had an unfortunate spin there in that penultimate corner. Got himself going again. Looks like no damage. So really just maybe a little bruise to his ego and pride, and see if he can make up some of those positions that were just dropped there.
All right, and the tech gods have smiled on me. I believe I am back with you all as we watch Michael Brooks now. Looks like he is trying to reel in Beaver. Very short gap up to Beaver, and he also has Glover behind. So a little train forming with Brooks in the middle as they navigate this GT4 traffic in the interior straight. And again, let's see if one of these drivers can get a pick here. It certainly looks like they are going to get rid of Glover in a cloud of GT3. And speaking of clouds, there, a little wheel hop there, a little bit too much curb, and it appears that Brooks might have misjudged that one a little bit, but keeps it on the track and is still moving with about 6/10 gap forward to Beaver. And indeed, they have lost Glover, peeled him off like a bad habit in that group of GT4 cars in the infield.
Yeah, as you were saying, multi-class traffic giveth and it taketh away. That incident that we saw on the last lap obviously dropped Barron Glover and Brandon Whitworth back a couple of positions. And now we've got Aaron Beaver and Michael Brooks in their stay, taking their place, trying to work their way up and challenge for a podium here. I have to say, Michael Brooks gets major points in my book for that save back there. He dove it on the inside. Questionable whether or not there was enough room left. That's why he got squeezed up onto the curb. He got 2 wheels into the air. He could have very easily spun left, but instead he just kind of opened the wheel up, took his foot off the gas, let the car settle, and got back into the race, playing the long game, let the other guy have the position, fight for another day. And here we see them still nose to tail fighting for that 4th position in the LMP3 class, obviously trying to fight for the opportunity to go up and, if they can, catch him. He's 9 seconds up the road, so Kyle Streichertz is, they're going to have to decide whether they want to fight and slow down or whether they want to catch back up to the podium positions. Or maybe it's a pit strategy question. They've got something up their sleeves for later in the race.
And my goodness, Brooks fighting his car there. You saw him get past Beaver on the straight and then overcooks that entry under braking into turn 1 again, similar to what we've seen him do a couple times. And then the rear end of that prototype wiggling back and forth. I think he's riding on some hot tires right now. Discretion would probably be the better part of valor to let those puppies cool off before making any other big moves. Meanwhile, looking at Dragata now, as he is still holding the GT4 AM by a paltry 11-second gap ahead of Patience now. Dragata driving away, and he is probably well into the pro field now. Looks like he's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, P6 overall among the GT4s. So he's got not only the entire GT AM field behind him, he also has a handful of GT4 pros behind him. So Dragata is putting on quite a show in that Aston Martin.
Yeah, it looks like somebody who's bucking for a promotion up to the pro class. He is really making a nice charge here. You know, and back to your point about the overheating tires, that can happen in both classes of cars, and that's a classic thing that a lot of people don't pay attention to in multi-class because they're either worried about the car in front of them or they're managing traffic and they kind of forget to manage the tires. But boy, if they get overheated and you start to lose them, that can compound things. So not only might you be slowing down from fighting, you're going to eventually have to slow down because you're going to have to lift and take care of your tires a little bit and let them cool off.
Yeah, and Dragota really putting on a clinic, looking at Patton now up in P3 and GT3 Pro. And as Prototype makes his way around Patton as they get back onto the, briefly onto the oval before diving back into the infield. That section of the track, I think that's where they used to allow the cars up onto the banking until it went through F1 tires at an alarming rate. So they had to get rid of that little ride on the banking. In this configuration, they don't spend any time on the banking, just on the straightaways and in the infield. But riding along with Patton here, gosh, he has got a mile ahead of him. You thought Dragata was driving away in GT4M. Look at Rain, 20 seconds ahead on Patton in P2. And so Patton not spending much time looking ahead, I don't imagine, but he does have Thorman behind him, about a second back. He may be seeing Thorman in his rearview mirror as he's watching for those incoming prototypes. And here is Thorman, another one of those beautiful Aston Martins. He's coming out of that 2-3-4 complex into the infield straightaway here, and heading into turn 7. Just a little kiss on those curbs. Don't want to hit them too hard, but don't want to stay away from them. These flat ones you drive over, of course. And I should really let my partner Chad be describing the fineries of this track. He really is quite a pro at it, and it befuddles me at every turn. And yeah, oh, there's another. I saw a cloud of smoke up there ahead of Thorman. Looks like one of the prototypes has turned and gone into the grass there again. And yeah, that's Hutchings finding his way into the greenery. And boy, that is a tough braking zone. That's probably the fastest one of the fastest parts of the track. You really got to get these cars woed down and turned in there. And in these prototypes, you really have to hit those brake markers with precision. And just missing your brake marker by a little bit or a moment of lockup will find you in the grass, as the number 12 car found himself there.
Yeah, it's tricky in those slow corners because you lose the downforce. If you're trying to get on throttle aggressively, you can spin the back tires. You know, as you said, if you lock up the brakes because you broke too hard, you start to lose grip that way. There's quite a lot that could go afoul on these P3s when you head into those slow corners coming off a real fast straight like that. So they can get up to pretty good speed heading into that final turn sequence there of 13 and 14. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're seeing them understeer onto the grass, is because they just haven't quite gotten it right, or maybe there's traffic that got in the way.
Yeah, and those the prototypes, it's kind of interesting switching to a prototype from a GT car. Driving a GT car, a lot of folks just kind of stomp the brakes and let the ABS do the hard part. But no ABS on these P3 cars. And not only that, wow, and what a move on the outside as that McLaren is in the middle of the prototype sandwich. He's flashing. I don't think he really appreciated that maneuver by those two prototypes. That must have been Whitworth and Glover.
That was Justin Ream. No, that was Justin Ream, our leader in GT4 Pro, who, as you just pointed out, has a 22-second lead. So he's obviously trying to protect his position, and that's a classic kind of thing that you see in multi-class, particularly coming onto that straight. One of them took the inside line, one of them took the outside line. The next thing you know, Justin's stuck in a prototype sandwich, and he's probably seen his life flash before his eyes, because I can't tell you how many times I've unfortunately been hit with net code by the faster class car coming through that very corner. They keep it real tight because they obviously want your draft to get slingshotted onto the front straight, but it can go, unfortunately, because of the nature of iRacing and sim racing, it can sometimes go against you, and you get contact, that sort of phantom contact that can really upset your race. So I'm guessing that's why he was flashing the lights.
And on lap 25 now, we're seeing these GT4s coming into the pits, and according to my notes, they will only go 26 laps. So good chance that we're going to see the whole GT4 field diving in here on this lap if they haven't been in for some other reason prior to this, which I don't recall seeing. So it is time for these GT4s to take on fuel, and here comes Patton. That was a pretty quick fuel stop here as Patton is now getting back onto the course. A little bit tricky of an exit here. You're off the pit limiter, but you still have to slow, not cross that blend line. You can't move over till you get past the blue cone there. But there is Patton back underway in P6. And hearing from race control, we got another penalty here. Car 58, that is one of your prototypes, Joe Hutchings. Looks like he just got tagged with responsibility for some contact. Didn't see
I think that was the contact we saw when they went into turn 12 there, and he ended up onto the grass. So that was that incident that caused quite a bit of shuffling there on the top of the top of the prototype class there, and why we saw guys dropping down and a couple others popping up into the third and fourth position, or the fourth and fifth position.
Gotcha. And meanwhile, we're riding along with Patience there briefly, who had Labano all over him. Labano has chipped that down to 0.7 now, and we've got to imagine that the rest of these GT4s are going to be hitting pit lane here anytime. Again, according to my notes, the burn rate is going to force all these GT4s into the pits for fuel on this lap, unless my magic calculator has done me wrong here. Meanwhile, Brooks here running in P2 with a 24-second gap ahead, 6 seconds behind his prototype field, is spreading out quite a bit. And we see there on our timing tower in the upper left, we have P5, 6, and 7, a number of prototypes now going into the pits. Now, if I was out there in one of these prototypes and saw the GT4s hitting the pit lane, I would enjoy the clear track while I could, but it looks like some of the prototypes are going in at the same time. And here's Dragata again, and he has extended his lead 14 seconds now. And just to get a flavor for it, his fastest lap is 131.14. Patience running in P2 and has turned into 131.4, P3 of 131.5. So Dragata is easily ticking off 0.4 or 0.5 seconds a lap quicker than his competitors in the amateur class. And in an hour race, that is going to add up, and you're seeing that happen here with a 15-second gap. Not quite as impressive as Rain, who's now sitting on a 40-second gap, but Dragata putting on a clinic in the amateur class.
Well, I think Rain is not yet pit, and it doesn't surprise me that he and Dragata have yet to come into the pits because they've been out in front. My general rule of thumb is if I get a 5-second gap to the guy behind me, that's when I start to lift and coast and fuel save. So it'll be curious to see. I suspect Ream has been fuel saving just because he's so far out in front. It's one of the reasons why I think those prototypes closed in on him so quickly. Dragata, on the other hand, because of that pace difference you just signaled, I wonder if he's just pedal to the metal and just trying to make a statement here and win in as convincing fashion as possible. But as you said, the pit window is starting to close here for the GT4, so I would expect us to see Justin and Leo come into the pits here. If not on this lap, God, it's got to be the next lap. But if it's the next lap, boy, have they been boy, have they been saving fuel, because as you said, our notes predicted that the fuel window would close at lap 26 or so. We're on lap 27 now, so if they save 2 laps of fuel, that's the benefit of jumping out to an early lead like that, is you can manage your fuel and tires and just kind of drive it safe, bring it home clean, and chalk up the podium, take the trophy, and prepare for the next race if that's what their mindset is.
Yeah, and our producer right now showing you the pit stops there on our timing tower, and for sure some of these GT4 cars have been doing fuel save, whether it's lift and coast, whether it's tucking in behind a prototype and trying to catch whatever draft they can. Now here is looks like Schwinkler and Patience are now in pit lane, and here we're going to see the rest of these GT4s come sputtering through the pit lane for their one and only fuel stop of this one. Looks like we are 38 minutes in with 22 remaining, and we're seeing some more penalties there as well coming through from race control. Dragata still waiting for him to come in. Would be pretty surprised if that is not pretty soon, as Dragata showing lap 28.
Well, this will be the call. Does he go into the pits here, or does he have enough fuel to go out for one more? He's coming in.
There he goes, and I'm imagining that Labano and Sterling are getting the word from their pit crew that Dragato has dived into the pits. We'll see if they respond. And,
if these guys who've been running out in front are in the pits now, Dragata and Ream, I got to think everybody else is going to follow them. Otherwise, they must have had an incident or something that would have caused them to be off the fuel strategy. But I think this is it. We're going to close out the pit window here.
Yep, and here they come, Labano and Sterling now entering pit lane for their fuel stop as well, and Ford up in the pro category, the last GT4 pro car to come in for fuel. And look at Schwenke, Brooks, and Whitworth in the P3 class. They're still cruising right along. Their pit window, according to my notes, is going to close on lap 34, so they've still got 5 laps or so in the tank, but notes a little off. So with a little bit of fuel saving and a little drafting, they may be trying to stretch out those pit stops a little further and take advantage of the clean track that can result when you let your competitors by and try to squeeze out a few more laps. And here's Dragata re-entering the track now, still in his first position. Labano and Sterling parked. Nope, they are rolling. So we'll see what kind of gap we're going to get when Labano and Sterling get back on track. Did Dragata have an efficient pit stop and maintain that huge gap that he had been enjoying up until this point? And here comes Patience. Patience is going to get past Sterling in the pits there. But Labano will remain ahead of him, and Dragata, he will in fact maintain that 15-second gap that he built up over the course of the race, having a good pit stop there. And Patience dealing with a couple of lurking prototypes, as Chad was saying. Very tough to make a decision there, and you don't want to kill your lap time, but you also don't want to get creamed from behind by one of these P3s. So Dragata letting those, or Patience, showing some patience, I suppose, or the prototypes were in going nose to tail through that section.
Yeah, I think this is the point where the gloves come off, so to speak. Obviously, the guys in P1 are comfortably out in front, so they're running a slightly different race. They're protecting their position, trying to run safe, make room for traffic, do everything they can to come home without any unexpected or unforeseen incidents. But you look at P2 and P3 in the LMP3 class, there's only 5 seconds separating Brooks and Whitworth. That's a fight that could develop. You go down to the GT4 Pro. Copeland right now is comfortably ahead in P2. He's got a 9-second gap, but you got 3 guys, Barrios, Patan, and Thorman, all fighting for that 3rd position in the GT4 Pro. And then same kind of story developing in the AMs. We got Dragata, who's got a commanding 15-second lead, but Labano, Patience, Sterling, all within a couple of seconds of one another. So I think those are going to be the drivers that we need to keep our eye on here as we head here into kind of the final 20 minutes. This will feel like a 20-minute sprint race to the finish. And with multi-class racing, it could get really, really exciting here. So let's see what these guys have in store for us, how much fight they have left in the tank.
All right, folks, we're going to take a short break here with our mid-race break, and we'll be right back with more action from Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Ricmotech high-performance sim racing equipment. Whether you're just looking to have fun, train for race day, or become a serious esports competitor, Ricmotech has you covered. Hundreds of name brand parts. Support from experts that love sim racing. Trusted by the pros. There's only one place to go, Ricmotech.com. Ricmotech high-performance sim racing equipment. There's only one place to go, Ricmotech.com.
The search is over. The most comprehensive league scoring solution is here, with the ability for multi-level championships, custom incident tracking, post-race time penalties, support for heats, drop weeks display, multi-car team scoring, advanced web widgets, rookie championships, a custom paint system, and load those results in seconds. Visit extremescoring.info today.
All right, welcome back to Apex Racing TV's presentation of the Ricmotech Sports Car Series, and we are finally seeing Schwenke rolling through the pits now after going 33 laps on his initial tank. The top three runners in P3, the last in the class to pit, I believe, and we are seeing them all rolling in now. And
Brooks has somehow continued on, so I think he was saving a mega amount of fuel there behind these two and is taking advantage of that to go one more lap.
Oh my gosh, he sure did, and that's interesting. And I guess sometimes people prefer not to be in a crowded pit. Maybe Brooks wants to roll in and out of there by himself without having to deal with cars coming in and out. But you're absolutely right. Brooks has continued and will take the lead here temporarily. I imagine when Brooks goes in for fuel that Schwenke will be back in P1. But for now, there is Michael Brooks, the wrong stuff, up for the time being anyway. 6 positions from his qualifying spot of P7. And putting down some pretty decent lap times as well, showing his best lap as a 1:21.7.
Yeah, I can't quite tell on my timing board. Has Mike Dam already pit as well? Because I noticed he picked up a spot there when those guys jumped into the pits. Okay, so he's in his proper position 3. So it'll be interesting to see, where Brooks comes out here as Dam comes around the track. Like, is he going to lose a position here, or it's going to be tight?
Oh, and Dam having that same problem again that in turn 1. He washes out of turn 1 into the grass, and here comes Brooks.
That's a long pit stop, though. I mean, I don't know what it is in the LMP3s. It's got to be comparable to a GT3. It's about 52 seconds cone to cone, so it just takes forever.
Schwenke and Dam will both pass him in pit lane. The next car back is P4, about 14 seconds back, so he's not going to lose that one, but looks like Brooks is going to come out in P3 after that pit stop. Well, take that P4 back. Look, he's fallen to P4 now. Yeah, that is a brutally long pit lane to be on the pit limiter as you're watching your competitors stream past you on the straightaway at maximum velocity. Ouch. So Brooks will come out of the pits in P4. Still nothing to sneeze at, though. He has moved up 3 positions.
Well, we got a race on our hands
big
now in the
movers.
LMP3s because Mike Dam's only 2 seconds back from Schwenke, so he's managed to close that gap up significantly by all the pit strategy and fuel saving that's been going on here. So we've got a 1-2 battle here in the P3s. Strikearts is about 14 seconds behind him, so a lot can happen here in the remaining 15 minutes or 13 minutes or so left in the race.
And here's Brooks all over Glover. I thought he might take advantage of the draft and show his nose there at least, but he's content for the time being to remain behind.
Yeah, I think this is Glover who's sitting in between Whitworth and Brooks ahead. So this is Whitworth behind, and I know these liveries sometimes look the same because they're all on the same teams, but boy, this is a nice tight little battle here, even for 6, 5, and 4 here, fighting for position. I don't know if they feel they can make up that 14-second gap to make a podium, but every point counts when you're running in the season championship. So even these little positions in 4, 5, and 6 can really matter to these guys, and we'll see them fight hard for it.
Yeah, and what a great shot from our producer Lee as Glover makes a move around that Mercedes as they go down the front straight, and listen to that Nissan V8. Oh my goodness. That motor is kind of the Japanese version of the small block Chevy. It's not super new technology, but it is reliable, powerful, and it sounds pretty. And we'll hear it wind out here again, heading into that interior straightaway down towards turn 7.
I see he's got a butt kicker logo there on the back of his car. Maybe his engine is kind of a built-in butt kicker on this engine, on this car here. It's got to feel just fantastic as well as it sounds.
And meanwhile, here's a look at John Sterling, and a pretty good mover in the GT4 AM category. He's moved up 4 positions now, driving that Benz, and he has looks like he's reeled in Patience there as narrowly avoiding disaster from that prototype, and it looks like Patience thought about trying to catch a draft off of that prototype and making a move there, but thinks better of it. Does show his nose going to the inside of turn 1, and behind him, Sterling in the Benz, and you see that BMW M4 of Kevin Ford taking up the back part of that train.
I'm wondering as I look at the remaining time here, we've got about 10 minutes left, if it might make sense to do just a quick rundown by all 3 classes, just as we've been focusing so much on these front runners because they're so far out in front, and you've got P2 through 5 battling. So maybe we'll do a quick rundown. I'll start with the P3s here. As we've been saying quite along from the beginning, Schwenke's been out in front, although he's got a race on his hands now with Dam closing the gap, and he's about a second back. Strikearts, our winner from last week, is 16 seconds back in P3 at the moment. We've got a nice battle going for P4, 5, and 6 between Brooks, Glover, and Whitworth, which we were just looking at. We've got Bobby Childs in P7, followed by Beaver, Rambler, Hartley, Violets. Hartley and Violet are both a lap down. Jackson, 2 laps down, and Hutchins unfortunately had to retire to the pits. So that is it for our LMP3 field. JR, you want to take the pros in GT4?
Sure, and on that list, Chad, Bobby Childs is going to be the hard charger. He has moved up 6 from his qualifying position. So Childs putting together a good race today. And here's our pro category. Got Rame, Copeland, Barrios, Patton, Thorman, Huron, Schwenkler, Ford, and looks like Daniel has parked it, showing 10 laps down and out. But there is our GT4 Pro. Pretty large spread there between them, about a minute between the first and last. And here's our AMs, Chad.
Yeah, I think if there's a lesson from all 3 classes, if you can qualify well and get out to an early lead on a track like this and build a nice little gap, then it becomes a Sunday drive, because we're seeing the same thing in the GT4M class. Dragota is still holding on to that commanding 15-second lead, followed by Chuck Labano in P2, and Patience is in P3. They've got a nice little race on their hands with Sterling not too far behind as well. He's just right on the tail of Patience. So this is going to be a race to watch to the finish here. We've got Lucas Dragota in P5, so he's made a nice move today to get up there. Let's see, how many is he up today? Oh, no, he's down 1 position. Sorry, misread that one. We got John Casey behind him in P6. Ruddock is behind him. That's Russ Ruddock in P7. Maxwell, Brown, and Weston a few laps down, and Brockway, who I believe, is he still running? No, I think he's parked it as well. He was involved in an earlier incident about 11 laps ago. So that is it for our GT4 AM class.
And on that list, I'm going to give hard charger to John Sterling, who has moved up from P10 all the way up to P4. So Sterling putting on a heck of a drive here as we watch Patience now surrounded by a couple of prototypes. He's got another AM car right behind him there. That's Sterling. He's got that gap down to about 0.3. And boy, it is tough to have a car that close to you for position when these prototypes start streaming through. And wow. And that
Don't underestimate how hard that is to do, because not only do you have the two cars of the same class on the inside fighting each other door to door, but then you get the prototype on the outside in the marbles off the racing line. There's no grip out there. That was really well done by all three cars.
My goodness, and it really looked like Sterling was going to be able to stuff that one through there. Not sure what caused him to fall back. There are a few slowdowns lurking on this track, and this is one of those tracks where you really have to probe the track limits and be right on those limits. And you know, as anybody who runs iRacing knows, you go an inch wide of one of those invisible track limits, and you are going to get a slowdown. And we are hearing that that is what slowed down Sterling there. But Sterling had patience there, but perhaps went a little wide with a lack of patience. I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of a good news, bad news scenario. Good news is all three of you made it through turns 3 and 4 side by side, 3 wide. That was very impressive. The bad news is you're all picking up speed, and you cannot go 3 wide through that fast chicane. And it looks like he just put too many tires over the curb, and that's where you can get kind of a nasty little slowdown. The good news is on this track, most of the slowdowns you do get, with the exception of the one on turn 1, if you cut through the grass, which I think is like 5.5 seconds long, you can burn them off pretty quickly on the long straights if you know how to do it without losing too much time in position. But it's surprising a lot of times when you get them.
Sterling and patience. This is war, folks. My goodness. Sterling using that V8 Mercedes-Benz power on the straightaway gets past patience. They end up going 3 wide with that Pro Class BMW into turn 1. There's a little bit of contact, a little wiggle, but as they say, rubbing is racing, and both cars still underway. But those guys are not done. They still are showing a 0.4 gap, and I can't imagine that the hostilities are going to end there anytime soon, as we're getting down to crunch time. Just under 5 minutes left in this one, and man, that was some stellar stuff there into turn 1.
Yeah, I tell you, those Mercedes are built like a tank. I've had many instances where I banged doors with them, and when you watch the replay, they don't even move, but your car goes bouncing.
Oh my goodness, and you don't want to see that. Teammates coming together, one pro, one AM, and oh my goodness, I can't imagine that there was not damage involved in that. And there's going to be some stern words in the paddocks when those two teammates take each other out. We'll have to take a look at Patton here and see if how his car is holding together. I'm not sure if the other car, I think that was Chris Thorman, his teammate. I'm not sure if that car is back underway yet or not, but oh my goodness, you never like to see them come together. And when you tap out your own teammate, oof, we'll just call that the patty.
Yeah, you did get the sense, though, as soon as they made contact and he sort of turned T sideways in front of him, that they were trying to let off the gas and get out of that without too much damage. It just was one of those things where physics, the car turned sideways, and, what are you going to do? You're going to drive through? You almost have to come to a complete stop to unhook the two cars. Ooh, that's close.
Dragotta, meanwhile, as we have seen throughout this race, he has built up. He's been running between a 10 and 15 second cushion behind him into P2, and got through the pit cycles, and that gap has not changed. So Dragotta in firm control of the top step of the podium at this point, with about 3 minutes left and a little bit of change. So Dragotta has driven off. So has Rame. And frankly, Schwenke with the 2-second gap over Dam looks pretty comfortable in P1 here. So our leaders have thrown down the gauntlet and made a statement, and nobody's going to be taking a last-minute dive at them when the checker flag flies, because they're going to be driving alone here. And wow, fantastic racing today at IMS. I think my respect for this track may have increased just a little bit watching what these drivers have done here in the show that they've put on. It's been an outstanding race so far.
Yeah, I told you, JR, this is a really fun track to race, just as long as it's multi-class with lots of action. It's only boring if you're in the single-class race, and I think these guys are showing us everything this track and these two classes combined have to offer.
Yeah, now we're getting a penalty from race control. That is going to be on Thurman. That was the pro car that was involved in that side-by-side contact in turn 1 that we saw on the previous lap, and Thorman is going to have to do a drive-through there. So he was found to be the guilty party in that little tussle, and it's going to cost him more than the time he spent in the grass, as he's going to have to take a slow roll through the pits at the end of the race. And not even sure if I would do it actually at this point. I would just maybe prefer the post-race time penalty than to be sitting there when the checkered flag flies. What do you think, Chad?
Yeah, it's you could probably have to do a little map in your head as you're on the fly, like figure out what it's going to be if it sends you back to the last of that last lap. Is it less than 51 seconds, which is the cone-to-cone drive-through time? If it is, I would do exactly what you just said. Just eat the penalty at the end of the race, depending upon where you're sitting in the grid. But if it's more than that, probably got to eat your spinach, get back out on track, and just live to fight another day.
And here's Ken Copeland now. And speaking of drivers who might have a difficult time seeing over the wheel, the kitty there must be looking under the wheel and must have another cat working the pedals. But Copeland doing well here. It looks like he is P2 well in hand. Here's Barrios coming behind in P3. Boy, it looks like about 6 seconds or so back of Copeland. So our podium here looking pretty solid. But look up front now. How did Dam get down to a 0.3 gap all of a sudden? Dam is putting on.
This is oftentimes what happens.
Putting on a damn card here at the end. And Ken Schwenke used this BMW as a pick to get rid of Dam, who is threatening him at the end. It did not see that coming.
I see this happen all the time in multi-class racing. It's like the same kind of traffic you see the first time they come through after all the pit cycling. Right towards the last 5 or 10 minutes of race, you see the same thing happen again. These clusters of prototypes come flying through the slower class car, and it's just kind of chaos to the end. And that's what we're seeing right here.
Dam is using the draft to close here. And, Chad, I got to wonder, was Dam saving his tires for this late charge and biding his time to make a move here at the end? I don't know if the white flag is out. If it is not, it will surely be out this time.
Checkered. They are on the white flag.
Yeah, that was the white lap. And wow, what a charge by Dam. Got me completely unaware, to be honest. There was a 2-3 second gap, and Dam made a big move there at the end to threaten Schwenke for P1 and to keep him honest there at the end. Pretty good finish there by Dam, and if we get a chance to speak to him, I'll ask him whether he was saving his tires at the end there. Here's Justin Ring, your GT4 Pro leader, is coming across in P1 with again a big gap behind him. So we'll pick up those cars as they come through. You can see on our timing tower there, the prototype podium has all taken the checker. Brooks P4 is across the line. Copeland in GT4 Pro has finished. And a little bit of chatter over comms here as the race is concluding. But wow, that was a fantastic run, Chad. I gotta say, I may be swayed to look at this track as a little bit more than autocross at the abandoned Kmart parking lot, because we saw some great side-by-side action, especially through those difficult areas that you identified in the intro. And appreciate your experience in this track and focusing our attention on that, because it was a great place to keep an eye on the action, with more or less nonstop in that section.
Well, I'll also take note that Kyle Streichhardt's our winner last week must have heard you commenting on the hard charger of the day, because he also ended up 6 points up along with Bobby Childs to take the podium. So I think in the hard charger award in the LMP3 class, probably going to have to give the nod to Kyle just because he earned a podium with his +6. That's a fantastic drive by him today. Really solid back-to-back weeks.
Yeah, and putting down some scorching laps at the end. Just a couple of ticks off of the fastest lap of the day. And wow, what a race. Gotta say, little more than I expected, frankly, and a fantastic performance by these drivers.
Well, let's run through our standings here, our final standings for the LMP3 class here. Travis Schwenke commanding lead throughout the whole race, but Mike Dam made it a race on the last lap there, closing just in P2, just 0.4 behind. Kyle Streichardt's our hard charger of the day, up 6, finished in P3, 19 seconds behind. And then, to your comments earlier, JR, we see teammates of the wrong stuff, Michael Brooks and Baron Glover finishing up in 4th and 5th. Brandon Whitworth in 6th. Bobby Childs, another hard charger, up to P7 from P13. Scott Ramler in P8, overcoming a penalty to finish middle of the grid. Aaron Beaver from the Aerokinetics team in P9. Robert Hartley, Eric Violette, who had some trouble early on, rounding out the top 10 and 11. And then, as we said earlier, Bruce Jackson and Joe Hutchings, unfortunately, had some things that dropped him lower down in the field.
All right, and here's our GT4 Pro results. Justin Rame is going to take the win. Geodesic Racing, the Canuck there. Ken Copeland will be P2. Mariano Barrios, P3. David Patton in P4. Brennan Horan, which let me check my notes here. He is the hard charger in Pro, having moved up 5 positions from qualifying. Great effort by Brennan. D2D eRacing. P6 will be Chris Thorman. Robert Schwinkler, the Wrong Stuff driver in P7. Kevin Ford in P8. And rounding out the pro field here at IMS, Steve Daniel.
Yeah, fantastic racing there. And here we are in our GT4 AM class. Leo Dragotta, commanding lead the whole race, ends up in P1 by a commanding lead of 13 seconds. Chuck Labano, one of our hard chargers, not the hardest charger. He was only up 5 spots. We had John Sterling up 6, but still 5 spots up to P2. That's a heck of a performance by our Frieder Sport racing driver. I wonder what kinds of chips he had in the car today. John Sterling rounding out our podium in P3 for Team Collusion. Don't know who he colluded with to make that happen today, but it seemed to work for him. Ian Patience, the Wrong Stuff in P4. Lucas Dragata, the other Dragon Sport racing driver, rounds out the top 5. Chuck Labano's teammate John Casey, nice showing in P6. Russ Ruddock, Flying Tortoise in P7. Dale Maxwell in P8, Alex Brown, the other driver from Team Collusion in P9, Neil Weston, our solo Porsche driver, unfortunately in P10, and Greg Brockway, who had an early end to the day from some incidents early on in the race, rounds out the GT4 AM field. I think we can... Okay, I was going to say, I think we can confidently say that Justin Ream will be taking over the lead in the pro class with back-to-back wins.
Boy, and I'll tell you, on that AM list, P1 and P2 lapped the field, Chad. They were up a lap at the end. Wow. All right, so we're going to come back to you after a word here with some interviews from our winners. Stand by.
Allow extreme scoring to do the work for you.
Ricmotech, high-performance sim racing equipment. Whether you're just looking to have fun, train for race day, or become a serious esports competitor, Ricmotech has you covered. Hundreds of name-brand parts. Support from experts that love sim racing. Trusted by the pros. There's only one place to go, Ricmotech.com.
The search is over. The most comprehensive league scoring solution is here, with the ability for multi-level championships, custom incident tracking, post-race time penalties, support for heats, drop weeks display, multi-car team scoring, advanced web widgets, rookie championships, a custom paint system, and load those results in seconds. Visit extremescoring.info today.
All right, welcome back, and my goodness, what a race. Leonardo Dragata is here with us. He is our GT4 AM winner today, and Leonardo, I'll let you start by correcting my likely mispronunciation of your name. Did I have that right?
Yes, you do. You have my name right.
Okay. And my goodness, not only did you lap the field here today, you ended up with a number of the pro-level GT4 drivers behind you. I'm wondering if somebody's going to come sniffing around wanting to move you up a class for the next race.
I hope not, because I want to be an AM. Yeah, I mean, next season, I'll try to be AM Pro, but I wanted to get one AM title, and so far on a good run, and likely to happen. So, yep.
Well, you should put on a good run today. And what was there any kind of particular strategy that allowed you to build that? You built a 10 to 15 second gap that you maintained throughout the whole race. How'd you pull that off?
Just have to manage your tires, keep the tires cool, and just make everything consistent. I had a few slowdowns every now and then, but I found out in practice if you go wide at 12, it ruins the slowdown, so you're pretty much good after that. And get a good pit stop and just finish the race.
Wow, outstanding. Well, that was an outstanding effort, I gotta say. And while we have you in there, is there anybody who you'd like to give a shout out to or thank for your win today?
Yeah, Lucas, my teammate, everyone at this league, you guys for streaming this, and my parents for supporting me. And yep, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, get cooled off and take a look at the broadcast. I think you got some good airtime, and you should enjoy it. Thanks a lot for stopping by, folks. That was Leonardo Dragata, P1 in your GT4 amateur class. And next, Chad, we brought in Justin Ream. He is our winner in GT4 Pro. Go ahead.
Justin, congratulations. I think in a word, we would describe that performance today as dominant. We are curious to hear your thoughts on how that race developed for you. What were you thinking? You had such a commanding lead. Was it hard not to check out, or did the multi-class traffic keep you busy? How was the race for you?
The race was kind of boring. I think it was a little unfortunate what happened to Marino, whatever his name is. Marino, I think his name is. It was a little unfortunate what happened to him, but yeah, I only had one little incident with traffic, kind of getting split. Getting split between them coming onto the front straight. But other than that, it was a pretty relaxed and quiet race.
Well, you'll be happy to know that while you had a commanding lead out front, maybe didn't earn as much camera time as fighting all along the way. We did catch that moment, and we wanted to ask you about that. Like, because the conversation today was quite a lot about how to communicate, coordinate, and manage traffic. That was probably the one instance where it felt like, was there miscommunication? Was what do you think contributed to you ending up the ham in that sandwich?
I think I'm not too sure exactly who the drivers were, but I think whoever was directly behind me, I think he was just a little impatient, I think, and maybe just was thinking about going down the inside a little too early, and then probably just also driving in his mirrors he had a car behind him that he was battling for position too. So it was just, I think it was just an unfortunate situation too. But no one died, so it's all good.
Yeah, that's generally the mark of success in managing multi-class traffic. No incidents, no death. We all carried on, even if it got our hearts racing a little bit.
Exactly.
Well, was there any moment? I know it was maybe a kind of a quiet drive for you today, but any moment that sort of jumped out at you as your highlight for today, other than the dominant win?
No, not really. I was just trying to just get to the end, I guess.
And what's your take of this track? Are you a love it kind of track, or hate it kind of track, or a meh? What's your feeling about Indy Road Course?
It's slightly less boring than Daytona.
In what sense? What makes it less boring for you?
There's a little bit more corners, and the lap is a little bit not as long, I guess I should say. But
Yeah, not
Yeah.
three quarters of drafting where you can kind of check your email all along the way. Well, listen,
Exactly.
back-to-back wins, that's a phenomenal performance. We know you missed the first race, but our suspicions are that you'll be jumping to the top of the leaderboard. So between today, last week, and your performance thus far, anybody you'd like to thank or who's made this possible for you?
Our team sponsor, Hyder Race, and then also the guys over at Geodesic.
Excellent. Well, we will look forward to seeing you next week at our next race. Road America, anything about that track that you're looking forward to?
I'm very looking forward to Road America. It's probably my favorite track, so it's going to be a really good race.
Well, you get an extra 15 minutes next week. I think it's a 75-minute race, so I'm sure that'll factor in your practice this week. Well, congrats again from us here in the booth. It was a dominant win, an impressive performance, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
All right, and last but certainly not least, overall winner and LMP3 winner, Travis Schwenke. And Travis, traffic was a little crazy out there today, which I guess is to be expected. There's about a 10-second gap between the P3 lap time and the GT4 lap time, and you got right up into that GT4 field very quickly. How do you think everybody handled the speed differentials and the traffic out there today?
It looked pretty good. There was only kind of one place, I think, actually in the inner straight where if you had more than one car when you went to the inside, which was the better way to go, really. If the first guy pulled over, now all of a sudden you were kind of pinched. So I was trying to make sure if I saw that, I would go to the outside instead, or if there was enough gap, slingshot between them. But that was probably the weirdest spot for it. But otherwise, I think everyone did a great job managing the traffic.
So, and here's what I have to ask you. So, toward the end of the last couple laps, say the last 5 minutes, we were watching all the leaders in all three classes, and everybody had a pretty good pad. The GT drivers had actually 10-second plus cushions that were driving in P1. I was watching your gap, and you had about a 2.5 second or so gap on Mike Dam, and I looked down for a moment and I looked back up, and there he was, a couple of tenths behind you. What happened there, and what was going through your mind when you saw Dam all over you on the last lap?
So it was that whole spot coming to that inner backstretch, and there was a couple of GT4s that were battling. There was really nowhere for me to stick my nose in and try to get by, without really causing an issue. So I had to wait, and he got right up on me, and then there was actually an LMP3 lapper in between as well. So he went down to the brake zone, and Mike even touched me a little bit. I think looking back at it, I probably broke a little too hard, worried about where that other LMP3 was going to go. But yeah, that's all it was. I don't know if you saw Mosport, but same thing. I had the lead and it shrunk like 7 seconds in the last 2 laps.
Wow, that is crazy. And yes, I was watching that very carefully. There was just the slightest little smooch on the bumper there from Mike, but no harm, no foul, I guess. And wow, what a fantastic race. Congratulations on the win and conquering what is not the most popular track on the schedule. And while we have you here, is there anyone who you would like to thank for your win today?
Yeah, I thank my Ryan teammates, and we now have Huffy on the car, so Huffy Bicycles, and glad to have them on board.
Fantastic. And looking ahead to next week, how do you like your chances? Are you looking forward to getting out there?
Yeah, I mean, this car's a lot of fun to drive. So pretty much any track, even this one was great fun. So it doesn't matter what track it is. I think we're gonna have a good time in it.
Alrighty. Well, thank you very much, Travis, for coming by to speak to us, and congratulations again on the win, moving up 3 positions from qualifying in P4 to take the victory, despite the little love tap on the back bumper from a hard-charging Mike Dam. Folks, that was Travis Schwenke, your overall winner.
Thank you.
All right. Well, Chad, looking forward now. We've come from Mosport, which is a track that these P3 prototypes had to love with those high-speed sweeping corners. This track, which was a little tighter, the big curbs, the challenges of traffic. What do you think we're going to be looking forward to when Greg and Larry rejoin the broadcast here next week?
Yeah, I mean, it's like the tracks are getting bigger and faster. So we'll move 2 weeks. I kept saying next week. I meant 2 weeks from now. On October 9th, we'll be at Road America, sort of one of the big granddaddy courses here in the U.S. That should be a fantastic challenge for both classes, and then, of course, managing traffic. Following that will be COTA, 1 hour race on October 23rd. One of my personal favorites, Donington. While it might seem like an odd choice in this selection of tracks, I think it's going to be a fantastic track for multi-class and these two to be racing. It's just a fast, sweeping course. And then, of course, Road Atlanta, right around the time of Petit Le Mans. Everybody will be running Road Atlanta in October, November, getting ready for Petit Le Mans, and then we'll finish up the series and the season at Watkins Glen, which I believe is where they started with the preseason. So kind of coming full circle to the that iconic track in New York. So I think all of these are fantastic venues, and will present all sorts of different challenges for what these cars can do by themselves and how they manage the traffic. So this is going to be a fantastic series. If you've enjoyed the first 3 races, I think what's left in store in the remaining 5 should be just more of the same, if not getting better.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And what a pleasure to spend this afternoon here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, spelling Greg and Lefty. It has absolutely been a thrill. And I think we've got a short message here for you, and we'll be back in a moment.
Ricmotech, high-performance sim racing equipment. There's only one place to go, ricmotech.com.